want to posit a little situation here because this just happened to me.
All right.
So I'm reading this book, right? I don't know if you've heard of him, Peter Beagle. He wrote a book called The Last Unicorn, which is like one of the best fantasy books ever.
Peter Beagle, he's a good friend of mine.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting. The Last Unicorn is one of the best fantasy books ever. It's widely hailed and everyone loves it. I love it. So I thought, why have I never read anything else by this guy? That seems crazy. So I went down and got a more recent book from him called Summerlong. And I'm reading this book, and, you know, it starts off interestingly enough. This couple runs into this young woman who appears to be kind of strange. She seems kind of otherworldly, and they can't quite put their finger on it. And, you know, she seems to need a little help, so they help her and give her a place to stay, and she kind of comes in and out, and nobody really knows anything about her. It's all very mysterious. And, the first 3/4 of the book were fairly interesting with all this going on, and this couple dealing with this strange woman and trying to figure out where she's from and what she's, seemingly hiding from and all this. And then at some point, they find out that she's married, okay? And the book presents her as very young, so this seems very strange that she's married, but whatever. And then she seems to see this guy who apparently is her husband and gets very scared and goes to flee. And the couple that kind of took her in, the older man, he's like in his 60s, goes after her because she's scared and this and that. And he gets her and takes her back to where she's staying. And at some point, like, this is like 3/4 of the way into the book, after she gets scared and he takes her home and whatever, like she says, "Take care of me" or something, and then they bang. And I'm thinking, what in the hell just what am I reading? What in the hell just happened? This makes no sense. This is stupid. This is not in any context within this story. Like, the whole, beginning had this kind of like innocent fairy tale like feel, and then all of a sudden this young, otherworldly woman is banging this 60-year-old Jewish dude, and I'm like, what is happening? So what I ended up finishing the book, and it really pissed me off because, the last 3/4 of it made no sense whatsoever, and it all kind of came from this incident. And I'm like, what should I have done in this situation? Should I have ripped this book in half and just given up at that point, knowing that, something's not going to turn out right? Or do you go down with the ship?
Well, so you had read the book of his, The Last Unicorn, and were impressed with it?
I've read it several times, and it's one of the greater fantasy books ever written. Like, it's fantastic.
So you figured, hey, I can trust this guy.
Absolutely. That's why I got this book. Granted, I didn't look this book up online. I didn't do any research. I just assumed this guy wrote one of the best fantasy books ever. His other stuff must have something to offer.
Generally speaking, yeah, I mean,
seems reasonable.
If somebody has gone up to the height of a masterpiece, if you want to call it that,
yeah,
a great novel, then they're usually trustworthy enough to think that they can probably do it again, or at the very least, you're going to get a good read. But
I would think so.
Sadly, that's not what you experienced.
I experienced frustration and confusion as to what the hell I had just done in reading this book. So if you were in this situation, would you have just stopped? Would you have just given up?
Yeah.
Maybe that's what I should have done. I kind of, once I was so far into it, though, I thought, well, what the hell? I'll go down with the ship. I'll see what happens. Maybe he'll turn it around. I don't know.
Yeah, if I turn against something, I'm done.
So if you're watching a movie and you get halfway through it and something pisses you off and you decide, I hate this, you just turn it off?
I've done that many times.
Really?
Walked out of movie theaters on numerous occasions because I thought, this is fucking stupid, and I'm not going to waste my time with this.
See, I admire that because I have never once done that. I've never once left a movie theater, and I've watched some incredibly stupid movies.
Oh, it's incredibly rewarding.
Huh. Interesting.
You know, it was interesting. Somebody I was with at the time, this is many years ago, but they were like, they felt odd about just walking out of the theater.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's not like the director and the producer are in the audience. Like,
right.
Nobody cares.
Yeah, if we hate this, we should just leave.
And even if they were, I would accost them and say, why did you waste an hour and a half of my time, buddy?
Hey, buddy, I got stuff to do. Don't waste my time.
You owe me a popcorn. No.
You owe me $15 for this popcorn and soda I bought for your stupid movie.
Yeah, that was, I remember I saw Kiss on a live farewell tour, and that was 15 years ago. I'm pretty sure they're still on a farewell tour.
They're still a farewell tour.
They've been on a farewell tour for 35 years.
Since 1983, they've been on their last tour.
Yeah. So, you know, the best thing about that concert, I probably would have left, but it was entertaining. But the best thing about it, I wasn't bitter about the experience because I had a chicken supreme nacho that was unforgettable at this vendor at the concert. And, you know, that's what I remember when I see Kiss. I remember that chicken nacho.
I like on Kiss's farewell tour, it's probably a huge spectacle with fire dance, fire breathers and go-go
$250,000. Yeah.
And Dave
and pyrotechnics.
The chicken nacho.
Cost me about $8-9 at the time, and it had this layer of chips. See, they were crunchy.
All right.
A mountain of cheese, some kind of marinated chicken. There was sour cream and guacamole involved. It was amazing.
And you got this from the venue.
From the venue. It was like way above what it was supposed to be.
Yeah, I was gonna say that seems very odd. You know.
I think they'd brought some like artisan in, or he snuck in, and he probably just like climbed a chain link fence or something and like pushed his cart in through a back entrance. Like clubbed down the other nacho guy and shoved him in a closet somewhere, and then he was vending out this real chicken nacho experience, and it was awesome.
No, but if he wasn't self-promoting, what's the point of knocking out the other nacho guy? Like, if you don't know who it was, maybe it was just a nacho savant who doesn't know his own worth.
I think he probably just wanted people to have an incredible nacho experience, and he was fine being anonymous.
He was aware of how awesome he was. He just, he doesn't need the limelight.
Yeah, that's what I think happened here.
Huh, interesting.
And, I remember there were some explosions on the Kiss soundstage, and that was pretty much it. No.
Yeah. I wonder if anyone, we talked about last night the infamous St. Louis Guns N' Roses concert from the early 90s where they started this riot.
Sadly, neither of us were in attendance, but that's actually probably for the best.
I'm pretty sure my dad was there, actually.
Really?
Because, he used to work for the Highway and Traffic Department, and he would work concerts. Back then it was Riverport. He would work concerts, helping watching the flow of traffic and this and that. And I'm pretty sure he was there that night, and I kind of have some vague memory of him coming home and telling us and my mom about this whole debacle with the riot and whatnot. But I wonder if anyone at that concert remembers some chicken nachos more than Guns N' Roses or the riot or any of that.
Probably not. So, yeah, that was, late or early 90s probably?
I want to say it was early 90s. 90, 91, 92, somewhere in there.
So somebody was videotaping Axl and he didn't care for it. So he yells at the security, "Get that!
Get that
Get
camera!"
that!" He's like, "All right, I'll get it, God damn it!"
Jumps into the crowd.
I don't think he got the guy, sadly.
I thought he might have hit him or something, because I don't know. I feel like the guy sued him or something.
That's entirely possible.
For battery. I think he jumped into the crowd. Well, I know he jumped in the crowd, and I think the guy was relatively close. I think Axel might have actually hit him.
My favorite part actually comes right after that, which is he speaks into the microphone, and he says, "Thanks for the lame-ass security. I'm going home."
Slams it down.
Throws down the mic. And then Slash, who's, great guitar player, but apparently not terribly bright. At least he might have been incredibly drunk. I'm not sure.
That's entirely likely, I would say.
Almost 100%.
And Slash was completely wasted while this was
like,
happening.
"We can't play. Microphone's broken." And this huge band, most popular band probably of that time, they don't have more than one microphone. And ironically, Slash is talking into a microphone to the crowd of people.
Yeah, never mind the perfectly working microphone that Slash is telling the people the microphone's broken into.
But
the best part is that whole thing took place in a time span of about 5 seconds.
That's true.
From Axel telling the security to get the camera to him jumping into the crowd to get it himself was about a quarter of a second.
Battering this guy.
He gave them no time. He just wanted to fight.
Yeah.
He was probably drunk and rowdy himself.
The hallmark of a great rock and roll frontman.
And then in their next album, in the thank you comments, they put "Fuck you, St. Louis," as if St. Louis had something to do with this.
What I find interesting is fast forward 20 years later and they play St. Louis again.
Right.
Now, I can't be certain, but I suspect that somebody might have had some kind of recording device at this concert.
Well, I know
and been recording Axl Rose. No.
Many people did. In fact, I saw a video from Schrock, because I guess he was there.
Yeah, every single person that owned a phone experienced that concert through their phone.
Yeah. Sadly.
And everyone videotaped Axl. Unfortunately, he didn't jump into the crowd, accost somebody, and throw down the microphone.
No riots this time. Maybe that's just the world we're living in. Everyone has a recording device now. Back in the early 90s, only journalists and paparazzi and, that sort of thing, pirates.
As if I were in that position, and there's another guy that there's been several points throughout history that people have not cared to have been videotaped or photographed.
Yeah.
And the guitarist from King Crimson,
I was just going to say Robert Fripp,
did not take kindly to that kind of thing.
No, he did not.
So much so that he sat in the dark, off stage, basically, on a chair in the shadows, and performed outside of the light.
When I saw him live, he was behind a big guitar cabinet, and he was kind of surrounded by stuff, and you could kind of see him, but he was sitting sideways to the audience, almost like 3/4 turn, almost to back to the audience. He was facing the band, watching the band, and not facing the audience. And back in the day, apparently, he would stop shows and stuff if people were taking pictures. He would just stop it.
Yeah, I can totally understand that, and I know.
Well, why though? Is it a shy thing? Is it who cares?
It's easy for most of us to say oh, what's the big deal? But if you're kind of a celebrity, I guess you could say.
Sure.
I mean, people think that would be great. I would go as far as to say it would not, because your anonymity, I guess, is just gone.
Well, that's definitely true.
People don't have any boundaries.
Well, also true, but if your anonymity is already gone and you've already achieved some sort of celebrity status, who gives a shit if somebody takes your picture? Especially if the people there, 99% of them, they're your fans. It's not people that hate you taking pictures.
Yeah, I don't know. I've had somebody take a picture of me before without my consent, and I gotta say, it bothered me.
Well, that's happened to me at art shows. Photographers walk around taking pictures, and I'm like, why? Don't take a picture of me. But
so you already have some of this inclination. Now imagine that happens 100,000 times.
That's true, but I think after, I don't know, man, it's hard to say, but I would think after 100,000 times and people, not just random people, but people that are fans of yours, and that's like, I think you would just have to accept it as some sort of inevitability.
Well, that may be so, or you might be getting off a plane somewhere in an airport and decide, hey, I don't care for this person shoving a camera in my face, and attack them.
Well, yeah, that I could see. I'm sure that's happened many times.
Definitely.
Celebrities have jet lag, and they get off a plane, and somebody's all up in their business, and they just knock them across the room.
I think that would be my natural inclination. The only downside to that is the legal costs would really stack up.
Yeah, that's true.
You know who I feel like, I'm a big fan of Tom Hanks. I like a lot of his movies.
Sure.
I think he's a great actor.
He is.
Probably the most recognizable actor there is.
Yeah, definitely.
I feel, I don't know what his life is like. I'm sure but I mean, can that guy walk anywhere and not get bothered?
He can't go to the local little bitty Jewish deli and get a sandwich.
And I mean, it's people singing his praises, but he can never have like a normal interaction with a human being ever again.
I don't know how you would do can he, I assume he can't go to the grocery store or something. How does he do anything? Does he just have people do that kind of stuff for him?
And I mean, it's my hope to never step foot in a grocery store again, but
that would be fantastic. I mean, I kind of envy him there, but still, what if
I definitely want to step into a deli though.
What if you want a friggin' beer and it's, late and you don't have anything? What, you got to call some assistant to go and get you one and bring it back to you? Like, you can't just get in your car and go 2 minutes to get a beer? It seems crazy.
I wonder if that's why a lot of celebrities will stay in LA, just because yeah, they're going to get accosted by the paparazzi and whatnot, but there's other celebrities around, and probably their day-to-day life is less. They're probably imposed on less than if you live, if Tom Hanks walks around in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Yeah.
I mean, people in Cincinnati, Ohio aren't used to seeing movie stars, so everybody's going to bother him,
That's true.
So maybe he would be bothered less in L.A.? I don't know.
Like a grocery store in L.A., you probably see celebrities all the time, and maybe it's no big thing to them. Maybe they just say, that's Tom Hanks, maybe.
Well, I would personally move up to the Yak in Montana, which has a population of about 500, and hit or miss electricity and running water and hang out up there for a while.
That seems like the way to go. Yeah, I mean, there's, there was rumors Jim Morrison did that for a while after he, quote, died,
Oh, yeah, I saw him up there a few times.
That was a legit rumor for a while that he went up to Montana and was like a sheep herder or sheep farmer or some shit.
Yeah, I think I might have hired out some goats from him to eat some knapweed. I'm not sure.
It's Jim Morrison with a big beard and 40 years later, so you just didn't recognize him.
No, I recognized him. I just didn't want to bother him.
You knew it was him. You're just like, I know you're not about this celebrity thing anymore, so I'm not even going to say anything. Out of respect to who you are.
Pretty much, yeah. I figured, hey, the guy's a goat herder now. Might as well leave him alone.
Did I ever tell you about the Jim Morrison album that I bought?
Not that I recall.
He, we were, and I still am, a huge Jimi Hendrix fan. And, for a time, when I was into rock music and not, I hadn't gone over to the classical side yet, I was collecting everything Hendrix that I could. I wanted all the recordings, all the, all the half-ass stuff that was recorded but never meant to go out there and, all that kind of stuff. And I saw a live album of Hendrix and Jim Morrison on the same stage together, apparently. And it was the worst piece of music I've ever purchased in my entire life. I don't know. I was expecting some genius artistic collaboration, or maybe Jim Morrison singing some Hendrix stuff, or Hendrix playing some Doors. I don't know what I was expecting. But basically what I got were two rock stars in their mid to late 20s, completely wasted. Hendrix just scraping at his guitar and doing feedback, and, you know, Jim Morrison just going, ah! Just complete drunken wailing. No, I don't even know that he was saying words, and this was the whole thing. And I forget how long it was, but it was significant. It was like an hour long. I mean, it was like a significant thing. It was one of the more bizarre music purchases I've ever made.
They were going the conceptual art route?
Without actually thinking about it. They just happened upon it because they were wasted. And at that point, I thought, even these guys are mortal men, you know?
There's no doubt about that.
Even Hendrix was not perfect.
No.
Isn't it crazy to think that those guys died when they were 27 years old?
Yeah, that's...
For God's sakes, I just turned 34, and it seems like they lived 3 lifetimes compared to me, you know?
Well, they probably did, but...
Well, they definitely did, but, you know, their contribution was enormous. There's kids all over the place listening to their music, and they didn't even hit 30. Like, those guys likely weren't even in their prime.
It's hard to say. I don't know. I mean, there's certain figures like that. Like, say, I don't know, Berlioz, I'm inclined to say.
Sure.
He's just kind of a youthful figure. I don't know that he was supposed to live as long as he did.
Like they were just not meant to even get to old age.
Yeah, like what would Hendrix be like in old age? Probably wouldn't want to remember him in that manner. I mean, I don't know. That was just, I think that's just part of his energy. He was not really meant to live a long time.
Hendrix, I think, maybe could have, but can you imagine like a 50-year-old Kurt Cobain? Like, that doesn't even make sense.
No, I can't.
I mean, if he was alive now, he'd probably be like 50. It's like, well, Jesus, that would seem weird.
Yeah, however depressed he was in the grunge era, it'd be way worse now.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
But, yeah, I don't know. I think part of those guys, too... I do think they would have been more reclusive figures.
Sure.
I think, you know, they would have probably just kind of disappeared once they had said what they had to say.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm sure they would have kept writing music, but I don't know that anybody ever would have heard it.
I would have been really interested to hear where Hendrix would have gone. And, you know, he was getting away from traditional rock for sure. And he was actually set to, like, just a couple days after he died, meet up with Miles Davis, and they had plans to do some recordings, and that would have been really interesting to hear.
I don't know. It could have been another Jim Morrison, Jimi Hendrix experience.
That's true. Like, it could have. Miles definitely did stuff, you know, at that point and later with guitar players who played very much like Hendrix, and at one point he had 3 of them in his band, and it got to be a little messy.
Yeah. I always think it's, yeah, I mean, I think Miles, nobody can fault him for anything, really.
We can fault him for things. He did some weird stuff.
Yeah, but, you know, he tried at least.
That's, I mean, when it comes down to it, the guy, like, practically invented, like, 5 genres of music, so he could pretty much do whatever he wants. Yeah,
I mean, it stands to reason they're not all going to be the greatest thing ever.
Well, that's true, and that, I guess that kind of ties in with that, you know, the book situation we were talking about. Like, you know, if you're out there and you're putting yourself out there and you're experimenting and trying things, like, some of it's going to work for people and some of it's going to not.
Much like that author's book, apparently.
Exactly. And I don't know, I think people are quick to dismiss somebody as a whole if they don't like part of what they've done which always seemed crazy to me because I've talked about it many times. There are Picassos and Matisses that I hate as much as any paintings I've seen, you know?
I mean, more often than not, most artists, everything in their catalog is not going to be the greatest thing ever. There's only a few people I can say that about.
Sure. And those people like take Brahms, who was a heavy editor of his own stuff and would only put out the best of the best. Like, if we had everything he completed in his life, we'd probably talk about him in a similar way. Like, he probably would have done things that weren't quite so inspired or whatever.
It's hard to say.
It is hard to say. Because all we do have from him is perfection, basically, so it's hard to imagine him doing anything else, but...
Well, I mean, even like Beethoven, who... same caliber.
Sure.
Maybe didn't edit heavily as Brahms did, but pretty much everything he has is genius.
Well, that's true. It's hard to criticize anything from him, and he did
some of it's more substantial than others, but
sure.
Yeah, I can name like two people. Okay, if your name's Bach or Beethoven, then you're set.
But all those guys, you know, none of them were as experimental as a figure like Picasso, you know?
That's very true.
So a guy like Picasso, it's just, you would have to almost expect things to not always go perfectly.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point, is
when
they kind of had their sound world and then functioned within it.
Yeah, when you're living on the artistic edge like him, you know, sometimes you're going to step a little over it.
Yeah, that's completely reasonable now that I think about it.
Yeah, for sure. So maybe that's the case with this Peter Beagle, you know. I've only read 2 books of his now. Maybe the rest of his catalog is solid, and this one that I just finished is, you know, an anomaly of sorts.
I gotta say, that premise put forth doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
It's completely ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't know if the guy is just trying to live vicariously through his characters, or
that's a good point. Maybe he envisioned himself as this old man, you know?
I think that's highly likely.
They talked about this girl, this young woman. They compared her to a Botticelli painting, and yeah, maybe he's looking back in his old age and just wanting a nice young lady friend here.
Seems very likely. Just, I don't know that it would make for that captivating of a read.
Well, I can assure you that it did not.
So
it did up until that point. It was interesting, but, you know, it took a weird turn.
Any thoughts on how that book was accepted as a whole? I mean,
I looked it up afterwards on Goodreads, which is a website I frequent often, where you can... you know, they have basically every book that's ever been written on there, and you can read reviews and see, you know, like, overall ratings, and it's very, I find it to be very accurate. Like, if a book has a terrible rating on there, it probably sucks. Because these are not, you know, in some ways, like, if you...
This is representative of the people that are reading these books, not of a critic's point of view.
For sure. And in some ways, if you go to a website like Rotten Tomatoes and you're looking up movie reviews and that sort of thing, like, everybody watches movies, and a lot of the movie watching public maybe isn't that intelligent and that sort of thing. Like, if you're going to sit down and read a book, you know, I give you a little more as far as trusting you and your opinion on it. Maybe that's wrong, maybe that's right, whatever, but I find the reviews on there to be pretty accurate. And whereas The Last Unicorn they use like a 5-star thing, kind of like Amazon or something. The Last Unicorn, I believe, is like well into the 4s, 4.5 or 6, like very highly rated. This one was like 3 point something, like much lower.
Well, I think for all the genres, you know, there's good stuff and there's crap, and I mean, it's manufactured that way, so... You know, film is not necessarily the same thing as a movie.
That's true.
Transformers 3 isn't the same as anything Woody Allen ever wrote. No,
that's true. That's true.
You know, and I mean, so
there
if we're kind
levels to it.
Yeah, and you know, same thing with like pop music versus, you know, jazz or classical or even the best of any genre.
Sure.
So yeah, I mean, I think, you know, there's tons of shit books out there, I'm sure.
Well, no doubt about it.
Kind of in this genre, this guy was held in high esteem and therefore given the benefit of the doubt. And I don't know. I mean, the question is, as the reader, is it unreasonable to suspect that every book you read is going to be good?
No, of course it is. It's definitely
so,
unreasonable.
I mean, why are you surprised that the book was terrible?
I guess just because of how good The Last Unicorn is, and that being the only other thing I was familiar with, I guess I had maybe unfairly high expectations for it. That's something that may or may not be fulfilled,
What was the name of this book that you were referring to?
It's called Summerlong.
Summerlong.
Mm-hmm. It was put forth as some kind of mythical, nice fairy tales type story. I thought, yeah, that sounds cool. It's a little less, probably a little less heavy than the things I've been reading. I could use a little break.
Yeah.
And it was that, but,
It's hard to say, but sometimes, it's... People have said what they had to say, and then that's it.
That's true.
It's... You ever get like a great album from the first band, their first album comes out and it's awesome, and then the second one comes out and it's terrible?
Yeah.
It's like they said what they had to say and that was it for that band.
And a lot of people disagree with me on this, but I would point to, without even thinking about it, A Perfect Circle. Who their first album came out when we were like 17 or 18 or something, and I thought it was brilliant. I'm like, it's like Tool, gone pop or something. Not exactly pop, but you know what I mean. It's like Tool shortened themselves a little bit and focused on songs.
Okay.
Instead of, soundscapes and, building, atmosphere and that sort of thing. So it's like Tool slimmed down. That's how I felt about it. I thought it was brilliant. And then that second album came out and I was like, okay. I guess they got that out of their system.
What was it? Something dressed? I don't know the band so well. I knew a couple things here and there, but was it like the same thing, only worse, or they tried to go a different direction, or? No,
I thought it was similar. It just lacked all the spark and interest of the first one. Like, I didn't think they tried to do anything too different. I just didn't think it was nearly as good.
May very well have been the case.
Yeah, I don't know. It seemed weird, but hey.
Well, Summerlong and the book that you read, The Last Unicorn, those are 48 years apart.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. There was a significant amount of time between them.
I mean, he wrote a lot of other books in between that time, but
sure.
It's not entirely... it's hard to say what may have transpired within that time frame. I mean, 48 years is a long time to be writing books.
A long time. And maybe I should take it in that context as far as, The Last Unicorn, he was young and his life had been, a certain way up until that point, and he was probably very inspired and all that sort of stuff. Now, after a lifetime of living and writing books, and who knows what else has happened in his life, obviously it's going to change him and his writing style.
Well, probably the best way to judge it would be to get another book from that time period and see if it's any good. But
yeah, sure.
If you didn't do that, I don't know. I mean, are you one to give out second chances to authors?
I'm one to give out second chances to anyone in the arts if there was ever something out there that I liked, sure. Because obviously that came from somewhere within him, and obviously he's capable of great things, and I'm willing to bet on him again and say, okay, maybe this Summerlong was just a story he needed to write for himself, and maybe he gets something about it that I don't, and whatever. I'm willing for sure to check out his other stuff and say, okay, is this me? Is this, just this book? Is, what's going on here? I don't want to miss out on potential other great books just because I wasn't such a huge fan of this one,
Sure. And yeah, I think with a painter or composer or anything really, somebody's gone up to great heights, I'm inclined to trust them again.
Oh, for sure.
To
at least give them a chance,
It's like, all right, well, you did that before. Like, that came from your brain, so I'm at least going to hear you out for a time.
Here's a odd example. I used to watch The Office, right? The American version of The Office. And
is that what do you mean, the American version?
Well, it was originally a British show.
Okay.
And they adapted it and used different characters and, changed it a bit. But there's an American version and there's a British version. So I used to watch the American version with Steve Carell. And the first season was kind of slow, but it was good. The second and third and most of the fourth, I thought, were almost perfect American sitcom television. It was brilliant. It was hilarious. It was, all the good stuff.
Up there with Seinfeld?
Nothing's up there with Seinfeld, but
okay.
It was
so I don't need to bother watching it, is what you're telling me?
Well, I would never watch it in Seinfeld's place, I don't think, but it was an interesting alternative, when Seinfeld was over or something,
Okay.
But going into season 5, I was still watching it, as it was coming out, and it started to get a little shaky for me. I'm like, I don't really like this. What's going on here? So I kept giving them a chance, though, because I knew what they were capable of. And
what changed?
Some of the traditional pitfalls and killers of sitcoms, which nobody seems to.
I know where this is going.
Nobody seems to notice this. Like, if you're working on a sitcom and you do this kind of shit, like, you almost deserve it, because it's like, this has never worked on a sitcom ever. Don't get, major characters engaged or married. Don't introduce babies into the mix. Don't, there's certain things that you just don't do, and they were starting to do all of these things, and I'm like,
isn't that the most, like, typical, stereotypical, like, bullshit of a sitcom that is best avoided? Because they tried to do that with Seinfeld. People were coming in and like, oh yeah, Jerry and Elaine should get together, and then will they, won't they? And they're like, no, we're not doing that.
Yeah, they wanted that dynamic, and they did the one episode with where they were making those deals. That's where that episode came from, because the network wanted Jerry and Elaine to get together, and they were fighting against it, and they said, okay, we'll sort of do it. And they did that episode where they're making the rules and that kind of stuff, And then after that, it just pretty much went away.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's every time any show has ever done that, it's been a disaster. Don't do that. And The Office started doing all of those things, but I was holding on because I knew what they were capable of, and there were still some funny moments here and there. And then eventually, about halfway through season 5, I'm like, okay, they're trying to do comedies with this new baby that's shown up, and then this couple that was doing
sounds incredibly stupid.
This couple that was doing this will they, won't they for like 4 seasons finally gets together, and they're very happy, and all of a sudden that's not interesting or funny anymore, and I'm like, God, So about halfway through, I'm like, that's it, I'm out,
So you are capable of walking out of a movie, or you walked out of a bad show.
That's true, but a movie's an hour and a half, 2 hours long or something. I'm inclined to stay through to the end on that more than a season of a TV show, which is like 25 episodes. You know what I mean?
It's 25 hours of your life you're never getting back. People trying to do comedy, now there's babies in the mix and moving to the suburbs, and
yeah, right. Nope.
Whole bunch of stuff that doesn't sound funny.
I'm out of here. I am capable of stopping, though. Like, I've stopped. I read a lot, and I was reading this book called The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. Maybe one of the top 3 books I've ever read. It was incredible, and it was like 1,300 pages long, and I was actually savoring it. I was reading it slowly on purpose because I loved it so much. And, after a significant amount of time with this thing and being in that world because I was reading it slow, I eventually finished it. And after I finished that, I swear to God, I must have started 6 books. and gotten, various ways through all 6 of them and threw them all down and, stopped on all of them because I'm like, I can't accept less than this now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I just read one of the most brilliant things I've ever read, and now I got this stuff that's, even if it's good, I'm like, I can't do this. I can't do it.
You know what you can do?
What's that?
You can do what I've been doing for 20 years.
What's...
Once you find the best, you never stray.
Well, that's great, but, Brandon Sanderson only has a certain number of books out there. And
you reread them.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a terrible idea. There's an argument to be made for, why go down even a little bit.
King, let me tell you something.
Here we go. All right.
I've been eating General Tso chicken for 25 years.
That's true.
Okay? Every China Panda restaurant I've ever been to, which is the name of essentially every Chinese restaurant.
Every Chinese restaurant is called China Panda.
I only get one dish because I know anything other than that's going to be terrible. Not terrible, but not as good.
But you've had bad General Tso's before.
Oh, I've had some of the worst General Tso's ever made. Tampa, Florida, you're on my list.
I was going to say, our Florida trip, the General Tso's.
If you're driving through a drive-through to get Chinese food, you're in big trouble. This thing was so... First of all, the sauce is supposed to be red, okay?
Yeah.
If the sauce is brown, no, you got a bad batch, okay? This was like turkey gravy poured on shitty fried chicken with large amounts of green onion. Everything was incorrect.
For some reason, I can my memory, generally speaking, sucks. But for some reason, I can remember that building and going through that drive-through and being at that window. It's very odd. Maybe because I heard about the terrible experience for so long afterwards.
Yeah, that was a historic moment in the General Tso domain. No one had ever made as shitty General Tso as that. They should get an award.
Yet, according to you, the little China Panda in Fenton, Missouri makes some of the best General Tso's you've ever had.
It's true. Yeah, they're on a much higher level than they're supposed to be. Occasionally, it can be a little too sugary, which causes some kind of coagulation of the sauce. It's not quite hot enough, but I'm going to let that slide because...
I think it causes coagulation of your blood, which led to you passing out every time you ate it.
Usually before band practice, I'd stop over and grab some General Tso's from China Panda, and I'd be like, I'm just going to eat this real quick. So I got a General Tso's combination plate and, 12 crab rangoon.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I'm just going to knock this out real quick, and, and then we're going to get down to work.
Then we're going to get down to the business of writing heavy metal.
I'd eat half this General Tso and then half the rice and maybe 3 or 4 crab rangoons. And then immediately fall onto the floor. Ah!
You would let out a groan similar to crawl onto the floor, which is not your, unlike me, that was never your preferred sleeping zone.
No, I don't care for it.
Yet in that moment, that's where you were at, and you didn't seem to mind.
I gotta say, I don't know that it increased productivity over the years, but all this talk of General Tso is making me want to go grab some right now.
It was interesting that we ever got any music written based on things like that, and the fact that we constantly needed, maybe it's because we were 18, but we needed a constant intake of food, which often included, fast food. And,
yeah.
Between that and everyone except me having a massive coffee habit at the time.
It's true. I got your brother hooked.
There was always something that seemed to be preventing us from just writing music. Yet we still got it done.
Actually, we were incredibly disciplined.
That's true. We must have been. I mean, we're looking at the results and how much we wrote and all that kind of stuff. I mean, we weren't bums, that's for sure. Yeah,
I actually look back upon that time and thought, wow, that was, just in my own personal life, I was had a lot of different facets going, and I struggle to keep that level of discipline now.
It's weird because at the time, I'm pretty sure we were all in school, we were all working, and we were functioning within this band. Several of us were in relationships. It's like there was a lot going on.
Individual practice on your instrument. I was studying classical guitar at the time. It's a totally different world. We were, the whole weekend, Saturday and Sunday, and Friday night for that matter, was pretty much devoted to us composing.
Yeah, for sure.
For 10-hour stretches at a time.
Yeah.
And, it was awesome.
It was a good time. So when we get back at some point and do this metal album that we've been talking about for a solid decade.
That won't be a metal album. It'll
True.
Most likely.
It probably won't end up being a metal album. But then again, we have discussed, at some point we do need to probably write a proper black metal album.
I've definitely felt that way.
I don't see how we can go a lifetime without doing that.
Which is odd because, well, I don't know if it's odd, but there's probably more posers in the realm of black metal than there is in any other genre of music.
There's no doubt about that.
And most black metal albums didn't need to ever get made.
That's true. Most of them should not have.
But, and it's usually people, running around talking about how evil they are.
Well, there was...
Which is odd because we're both fairly upbeat people, I think.
For sure.
But yet there's still some impetus to want to make a really dark album.
Yeah, but the albums we liked in that genre were not, people just talking about how evil they were. We definitely liked the more intelligent stuff and the more musical stuff and the...
Well, it's an atmosphere.
The guys that were focused on the atmosphere and, most of the stuff that we listened to, if you really looked into it and looked into the lyrics and the whole presentation, it was mostly about cool stuff like nature and, the cold and forest and, it wasn't about being
I do
evil.
love all of those things.
It wasn't about being evil because, if you write lyrics about how evil you are, I mean... I think you can only be so intelligent,
Yeah, that's true.
And at a certain point, I'm like, okay, yeah, that's not for me.
Yeah. There's the one great hallmark to every great black metal band is you got to own a cape. If you don't own a cape, you're done. You might as well not even show up. No. So
on this album, are we going to be wearing capes and in corpse paint? Or how far do we go with this?
I mean, probably,
What if
somebody should probably buy like a witch hat? No.
A witch hat. What if we're 40 by the time this gets made? We're 40 years old and corpse paint with capes on?
We're all going to need to gain about 100 pounds and insist on being shirtless on the album cover.
Remember those oh God, those immortal photos? You're just like, oh my God, you guys, what are you doing? You're a brilliant band in this genre. Why do this?
Yeah, that was really stupid.
Remember that time we were writing and it came together very quickly. I remember it distinctly, but we came up with all these awesome riffs and we put it together in this song and then we recorded it even, I think.
Yeah.
And we immediately listened to it and said, oh my God, this is an immortal song. This is the immortal song they've never released.
Yeah. We wrote their opening track for their new album.
We should have sold that damn thing to them.
It was hilarious.
We should have sold that to them because it was actually a really good song.
See, I think the one we did after that was far more interesting.
I don't remember what we did after that.
We chucked that thing.
Yeah, I remember getting rid of it like immediately.
Yeah, we got rid of it immediately. There was like,
Well, we knew we had just aped, a band that we both liked.
There was like 4 hours work gone. Yeah. And then we released, that was the next piece we did was like that cave music.
That was the next piece?
I'm almost certain.
Oh, man.
Which was like highly experimental sound world that somehow I got a hold of a microphone and was like, with like 100% reverb, 100% delay, pushed it down like 8 octaves, and it just sounded like some creature like screaming in a cave.
we went off the rails with that one. We worked on it for like 15 hours straight, and I remember we had 2 digital 8-tracks next to each other, like plugged into each other, like had tracks going back and forth, like we couldn't even keep this shit straight.
The technology aspect was definitely in our way because neither one of us had the capabilities of Steve Wilson production, Porcupine Tree, for those that don't know. Great band. We could have used his help because our ideas were much larger than our capabilities with technology at that time. We
were definitely not music engineers, but for all things considering, the fact that we got any of that recorded was pretty impressive.
Yeah, that was fun.
I wish I still had that thing, man.
I think that's essentially what the album will be when it's released. It'll be like a quadruple disc sound experiment. No,
that's probably true, actually.
Of probably a series of bizarre episodes.
Didn't that quote cave song though start off our kind of musical dark ages?
Oh no, I think that was way earlier.
The Dark Ages?
Yeah.
So we had already come out of that?
Oh yeah, we are way out of that.
Interesting.
Yeah, the Dark Ages was when I was trying to take all the stuff I was learning in music theory class and apply it to our band, and we were trying to get more classical, and it was not working because the problem with, theory and stuff like that is our music was way ahead of what I could label.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I mean, now it wouldn't be a problem, but yeah, you got to keep those two worlds separate.
Well, I remember you and Kevin being like at the piano messing around with stuff, and I was coming up with riffs, and none of it had anything to do with, the other, and it was just kind of a disaster.
Yeah, I mean,
it's like we were on different pages for a while there.
Yeah, and I think that was probably part of the process, but yeah, I think that was if it happened that way, it probably needed to.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's, I'm sure, incredibly frustrating, but yeah, exploration has to happen, I guess, from time to time, and sometimes you come back with absolutely nothing.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But
I've
much like that author of that book.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone through long phases of painting in a certain style or a certain genre or whatever that no longer exists because the whole process turned out terrible, but it got me to the next one, which was good or whatever.
Yeah, I can't help but think that it's so hard to say why it existed, but yeah, it had to.
Yeah, for sure.
You're working through some kind of problems, and I guess ultimately the fact that you could have kept doing what you were doing, that was already going well.
True.
But some part of you thought, well, you wanted to remain authentic to your artistic self, and sometimes that means getting uncomfortable, and sometimes that means doing something much worse than what you were doing.
Well, that's true. I mean,
until you figure it out, if you figure it out.
In order to try things and, expand and grow, yeah, for sure.
Or you can do what AC/DC's done for the last 30 years and just write the same album over and over.
One of my favorite rock music quotes, if you will, they asked somebody, a magazine, or somebody asked Angus Young, they said, "What do you say to critics that say you've made the same album 12 times? And he goes, "Well, they're wrong. I've made the same album 15 times." And for some reason, I love that because he knows that they're not, experimental or trying to be Pink Floyd or anything. Like, he knows what they're doing and what they are, and he's okay with that, and he's having fun with that, and I respect the hell out of that.
Yeah, it's that's completely acceptable.
They hit their spot, they found their groove, and they just kept riding it out,
mean, I myself bought one AC/DC album, Back in Black, and I figured, okay, well, this is the best out of their catalog, and their whole catalog's the same. So,
if you own Back in Black, you're probably pretty set as far as AC/DC goes.
Yeah, I didn't bother buying the other 14 albums, but
maybe there's a lot of hardcore AC/DC fans that would disagree with that, but
Yeah, they're too far in that crystal ball. I can see things as they are, and they're all the same.
I would say that's pretty accurate. I think that's fair.
I'm not saying they don't kick ass. They do.
Oh, they clearly do.
But
they're like 60 years old and still kicking ass.
So I guess to bring it back to The Office, I saw one episode and it was pretty funny.
All
but
right.
I think somebody put the boss put like bacon down and stepped on his George Foreman grill.
Yeah, he burned his foot. And then he's freaking out about it all day and acting like he's handicapped.
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
It's funny stuff.
So is this show still on?
No, it's done now. They did 9 seasons.
And how many were good?
So the first one, as many first seasons are, I would compare it to the first season of Seinfeld in that it's kind of...
They didn't find their stride just yet.
Yeah, it's kind of slower. Like, it's still funny, but it's kind of slower, and they hadn't quite figured everything out yet. And, there's some characters in there that aren't really in the later season. Like, things just haven't settled.
Okay.
But it's still funny. It's still worth watching. But seasons 2, 3, and 4 were basically, they had figured it out. And we have, roughly, 75 episodes, or not, no, probably more like 60 or so, because the 4th season was shorter. But we have roughly 60 episodes that were fairly perfect for American sitcom television. And then when they got into season 5, it started going, and then it kind of stayed in that zone until I believe season 7 was the last one with Carell. And when Steve Carell left, it left like a gaping hole in that show. And it would be like,
Wasn't he like one of the main dudes?
Well, he was the main star of the show, essentially. Not only that, but he was the boss of the office. Like, the whole office kind of functioned around him and... how he handled things and all that kind of stuff, and his outside of work life was like a big component of it and all this, and then all of a sudden he's gone and you expect the show to just be fine, like, psh. And they tried to replace him with some funny guest and,
It's like Axl Rose and Slash left Guns N' Roses.
Right.
And then Guns N' Roses wants to go on their own.
They want to go on and keep calling themselves Guns N' Roses, and, maybe they even put, they even put a talented singer in Axl's place and a really good guitar player. It's not the same.
I mean, it's going to be a totally different band.
I mean, they had Will Ferrell in the office for a while as the new boss.
That's surprising. It's a pretty big name.
Huge name. And, there were spots that were funny, but it's just different. It was just different. It just felt weird. It's like, Steve Carell is supposed to be in this chair. Where's Steve Carell?
Yeah, I myself, I stick to the classics.
Seinfeld.
King of Hill, Curb Your Enthusiasm, Always Sunny. I don't need to stray from that. I don't have that much time to watch TV, so like the 30 minutes to an hour, which is not even really a few times a week that happens,
Yeah.
That I'm going for the best of the best. Just like I'm going to eat some General Tso chicken later today.
Hard to argue with that. I heard season 9 of Curb is close.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, apparently Larry's been working on another season.
He keeps saying he's going to stop doing Curb. That was like 4 seasons ago.
Well, it's like Seinfeld, he was... Every season he quit, and he made it through 7.
It's true.
He's made it through 9 of Curb, but there's only 10 episodes each season, and... He has basically 1,000% control over that show. I don't think HBO tells him anything.
They would be wise not to.
And whereas before, he's kind of under the NBC people, and there's certain things he couldn't do and say Kirby has total control, so that probably helps him a lot.
I mean, haven't these networks learned anything? They should follow the HBO model, which is hire people that you think are funny or dramatic or whatever the show is about, who you believe in, give them the money, and then leave them alone.
Get out of the way.
Network executives, I mean, they obviously ruined the show that you were discussing, The Office or whatever.
Yeah, for
These
sure.
people don't know shit.
No.
You know, they're business people. They don't know anything about creative endeavors. They don't know about writing. They have their own stupid ideas that no one wants to hear, yet they have the power to promote change.
For sure.
And why not just leave it to the people that actually do that for a living?
Hey, I completely agree. To get out of people's way, get out of creative people's way, and let them create. You know, same thing with movies. Like the best, usually the best movies are. If we talk about a guy like Woody Allen, like he wasn't making big budget Hollywood features where there was pressure on him to do certain things, and all this kind of stuff. He was just making the movies he wanted to make, and I truly believe that in most of those movies he had 1,000% control. And they were great.
I mean, I don't know. He had, when he released movies back in the day, I mean, they were pretty big events.
He was definitely popular. He's definitely well known, but his movies were never premiering and breaking box office records or anything like that.
Really?
No, not at all.
Huh.
He would win awards and stuff, but he was never expected to make huge money, I don't think, at the box office. His movies were just popular because they were so good. That's the only reason.
Yeah, they are hilarious.
Like, they're not, and he released a ton of them, and some of them got no attention and got, didn't make any money, I'm willing to bet, just kind of more or less broke even, and some of them were bigger, but he was never smashing box office records or, anything like that.
Any favorite Woody Allen movies?
Oh, dude, there's so many. Like, you could watch any, in my experience, you could watch any Woody Allen movie and it will be worth your time.
Well, I mean, his catalog dwarfs everyone else, period.
Huge.
I'm a big fan of, and yeah, like you just said, you could pick any number of things, but I really like Play It Again, Sam. I think that is hilarious.
One of my favorites.
Tell her you've seen a lot of dames.
Oh, that is funny stuff.
It's like just nothing that a little whiskey can't fix.
You ever seen one that stands out to me? You ever seen The Purple Rose of Cairo?
I have. Haven't committed it to memory, sadly.
With a young Jeff Daniels is really good.
Yeah.
And, obviously the big ones like, of course, now I'm not going to be able to remember. Manhattan,
Mm-hmm.
What's his big hit? Damn it.
I don't know.
No, I can't think of it. But Manhattan's really good. I'm a huge fan of Hannah and Her Sisters. It's one of my favorite movies. It's kind of an off-the-path one. It's more dramatic than funny. But, he's so good at what he did. I can watch Hannah and Her Sisters or Manhattan and want to move to New York and have that kind of life. And it's like, there is nothing that I would hate more than that, but he makes me want that because he paints it in such a compelling way,
Yeah.
He's so talented.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, two people that would hate New York probably more than anyone would be both of us. I mean, the art community would be incredible, and
sure.
I'm sure the General Tso Chicken's on par. But, like, in terms of the life energy to live in a place like that,
oh God,
I would have a really hard time. I mean, I don't like loud noise. I don't like fast-paced stuff, and I don't like a lot of activity and people around me.
Sure.
It makes me uncomfortable, and I know you feel very similarly.
For sure.
But, I mean, yeah, I would love to be in a place like that because of the artistic opportunities, but I think it would just drain, like, your life force just to live there. To, like, go to the grocery store would be, like, a big deal.
I can't even imagine visiting there for more than a day or two, much less living there. But then I watch, Hannah and her sisters, and I see Woody Allen walking around the streets and talking about New York, and they're showing some of the architecture and, you know, playing some jazz music, and like the experience, he makes it seem so cool.
Yeah.
You're like, man, I want to go and have that, and then you're like, no, wait a minute, I would hate that, but that just shows you how talented Woody Allen is.
Yeah, that's true. The romantic idea of New York is portrayed and in a compelling way, that so much so that two people that would hate that place more than anyone alive want to move there.
we didn't even mention Whatever Works, you know.
Yeah.
Possibly one of the best Woody Allen movies he's ever made. If you haven't seen that, with Larry David essentially playing Woody Allen, you know.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
It's not even a different character, really. It's the same Woody Allen character that he is in every movie except played by Larry David. What could be better?
Yeah. You were trying to think of Annie Hall earlier.
Annie Hall is what I was trying to think of. Thank you.
I'm trying to think. I cannot recall, and you know, I need to watch it again, because if I can't remember the title, clearly I need to remember it again. What is it? In Death and Love? Is that a thing?
Yeah.
Or it's really something close to that. It deals with it's like quite philosophical in its presentation. It's hilarious, you know. This is pissing me off now.
Even his dramatic stuff is Match Point.
Match Point's incredible.
Awesome movie. And what's Vicky Cristina Barcelona, which deals with like an artist and these three women he's kind of like intertwined with, and it's like, it's way more dramatic. There's hardly anything funny in there, and it's an incredible movie.
Yeah, it's
although I've only watched that once, and I would have a hard time watching it again. And I don't know if I've ever told you that story, because I bought it and I was really excited to watch it, but I had been sick. I'd been quite sick for some time, and I came home to put it on. I'm like, I'm not going to do anything this evening. I feel like shit. You know, I'm just going to watch this movie and enjoy it. And for God knows why, for some reason, I decided I'm tired of eating. The only thing that sounds good is a cinnamon roll right now. So I put some cinnamon rolls in the oven. I used my oven for maybe like one of 2 times since I've lived here in the past decade. And all right. I cooked up these cinnamon rolls, and I brought them in here, and I put on this movie, and I ate cinnamon rolls for dinner and watched this movie. By the time I was done with this movie, I felt so sick. Like, I don't think I've ever felt that sick in my entire life. And it was awful. And every time I think of that movie, I think of that experience, and I kind of ruined it for myself.
What's wrong with cinnamon rolls?
I love a good cinnamon roll, but I had been sick for some time. My stomach had been upset and all this, and then I ate filled it with cinnamon rolls, and it just made it so much worse. Oh, God. And then, yeah, that's kind of what I remember when I think of that movie, but it's a great movie.
All right. Well, I don't know. I'm going to go off on a limb here and say, if I recommend 2 Woody Allen movies, if you're down, you'll find out as a result of these 2. All right. I'd say Love and Death and Play It Again, Sam.
Sure.
I'm sure there's a lot of Woody Allen fans who might disagree with that, but those are a great starting point, and I think they're just hilarious. And Love and Death is, you know, like I said, it's quite philosophical, and it's just intelligent comedy done at its best.
Sure.
And yeah, it's hilarious.
The guy was brilliant, and that's how you know somebody's on top of their game and has been for a long time. Because if you had a Woody Allen conversation with Woody Allen fan that you'd never met, like both of you could probably point to 2 or 3 movies that you like more than the others, and both of you would pick different things. You know, he's got such a deep catalog. Like you could go in any direction, you could pick any movie and have a perfectly good argument for why it's your favorite.
Yeah, there's some film artists that I've been wanting to get into for a while, and I have not set aside the time to do it. But I'll butcher his name, Ingmar Bergman.
Bergman, yeah. Dude, Bergman's maybe the best.
Yeah, I know you've been a huge proponent for his films in the past, and
incredible.
Any particular favorites?
Dude, Fanny and Alexander, which is a late work of his, I would call it my favorite movie, and it's maybe the most artistic and brilliant thing. I mean, every scene in that movie is like a painting. It's incredible attention to detail. The story is awesome. It's gripping. You know, the full version of it, which I think was actually made for television, which is weird because in this country, we associate movies that are made to be on television as complete shit. Over in Sweden, apparently it's different, or at least it was for that one. But the complete version is like 5 hours long, and you want more of it when it's done.
Interesting.
Like, you're like, this is incredible. I want to be in this world even longer, and incredible movie. Most of the soundtrack is Schubert. It's just I can't recommend it enough. I spent $60 buying it because I bought a special edition, Criterion edition Blu-ray with the full version and the theatrical version, and documentaries on the making of and all this kind of special stuff. I spent $60 on it, which at the time I was like, oh my God, how can I spend $60 on one movie? I don't have that much money. And once I got it, I'm like, I'm so glad I did that, and I probably would have paid twice for it, And,
this is something that I think is important to know for listeners out there who want to investigate this. And that is, you're settling into an experience.
Exactly.
If it's the difference between listening to an hour-long Bruckner symphony or a 3-minute pop song. I mean, a lot of people like classic kind of films. Like, I'm a huge Barry Lyndon fan, Stanley Kubrick.
Sure.
And people that I've recommended that movie to who have watched it, they're like, it's really slow.
Right.
Like, slow? What are you talking about?
Right.
Or people who have said they didn't care for The Godfather, which is ridiculous.
Makes no sense.
It's like, oh yeah, it's slow. It's like, it's building anticipation.
That's right. It's building into something.
You got to give it some time to develop. You got to take pleasure in the narrative and in the dialogue that's occurring and the interactions and the subtleties of that. If you're used to giving an hour and 15 minutes and you want explosions everywhere,
right,
then don't watch this movie.
Well, it's like, The Deer Hunter, like the first 45 minutes of that freaking thing, they're at a wedding and you don't know who these characters are or their motivations or what's going on, or nothing's, quote, happening, They're just at this wedding, and it's building a scene, it's building an atmosphere, and it's setting up the rest of the movie, and you just have to let yourself be immersed in that. And it's very similar with Fanny and Alexander. The first, I don't even know how long. It's really, about at the intermission, there's an actual intermission in the movie, before it feels like anything really happens, because before that it's all just it's world building. You're seeing the characters and their environment, and they're going through kind of what they're doing, and you're just waiting for something.
I mean, something's going to occur, but you have to establish some level of normalcy first.
Absolutely.
And that environment and the setting,
Could put everything into context, it makes it that much better.
Come to think of it, I'm watching The Godfather this weekend.
There you go. Been a while.
I love. I'm skipping parts 1 and 2, which everybody knows are terrible, and going straight to part 3.
Well, that simply makes no sense. When you have a director who admits that he basically made the movie for Coke money. You can't go into it expecting it to be good, Some people will defend it to the death, which I don't understand at all, but hey.
Even the director doesn't defend it.
The director says, I needed Coke money. I had a huge Coke habit.
Yeah.
That's not a good start to any kind of artistic endeavor. But as we all know, the first two are essentially perfect films.
Oh, they absolutely are.